made any recommendation. In reading through the joint report by the Electoral Commission and the Supervisor of Elections, they also did not make any recommendations in their report. However, I would like to read the conclusion of their report, which states, and I quote, Mr. Speaker, sir, the 2014 general election was a testament to the collective will of the people to return the country to democracy. It was indeed, Mr. Speaker, sir, the people of Fiji had looked forward to the 2014 general election because we all wanted to have our democracy back. Be that as it may, Mr. Speaker, sir, the political parties had identified shortcomings in the 2014 general election. They made concerted efforts to bring these to the Electoral Commission. It was to no avail. Mr. Speaker, sir, it is well known that if authorities do not consult the people, it does not matter how well a law is written. Its implementation will be hampered by the notion of its imposition on the will of the people. We have had 2 general elections in Fiji, and the people remain doubtful on the system of election. The doubts are represented by the people who had voted the opposition candidates in the 2014 and 2018 general election. The numbers had increased and will continue to increase, Mr. Speaker, sir. The doubts are contained in the joint opposition party submission to the Fiji Electoral Commission after the 2014 general election and whilst preparing for the 2018 general election, Mr. Speaker, sir. I wish to highlight just a few, 7 in fact, of the recommendations. 1, that a total review be conducted on the information system, the IT system used in the elections office, and in particular all computers and the software used in the counting of votes. That the count at the polling station is to be taken as a final count unless there is a dispute, then an audit of recount is to take place or a recount at the National Tally Centre. That all Turangani Koro advisory councillors, provincial councils, the Kino councils, town councils, rural local authorities be notified by telephone, email, and letter by the Fijian Elections Office in order that they inform their communities about voting, and not just to be informed through the media or a press conference, as most are not available to this medium of communication, Mr. Speaker, sir. The Section 119 of the Electoral Act be amended in order for the Electoral Commission to approve observers and not the Minister for Election. That the Electoral Commission, be granted its own separate budget and to employ their own employees, including their own secretary. The underlying philosophy has to be that the Electoral Commission and the Supervisor of Elections' primary objective is to facilitate free and fair election rather than to default to a restrictive and forbidding environment and rules. That the minister responsible for elections should be the Prime Minister, as it has been the precedents in this country. Mr. Speaker, sir, the people of this country are asking for fairness. That is all. We simply ask for fairness so that all political parties compete on an even playing field. That is our prayer. For true equality be imposed by the electoral rules so all political parties have an equal chance under the system rather than a system that is designed to deregister parties and punish politicians. I would just like to refer, Mr. Speaker, sir, to an example of how rules operate against opposition parties. I turn to the specific provision that has greatly handicapped opposition political parties. I speak, sir, about the 48 hours blackout before the day of the election. First, Mr. Speaker, sir, the blackout does not apply to pre-poll voting, which begins 2 to 3 weeks before voting day. So, in fact, the one-day voting is a myth because elections actually take place over a month in Fiji. Honourable Speaker, the experience from 2014 and 2018 is that the 48 hours blackout is designed to enable the ruling party to silence opposition parties. I say that because in 2018, internet trolls established fake pages mimicking the Fiji Times, the Fiji TV News, etc., and spread fake posts. For example, a falsified SADALPA policy to abolish Diwali. Mr. Speaker, sir, it would be interesting to investigate and find out who really was behind the fake posts during the blackout period. Due to the requirements of the blackout period and draconian penalties to be meted out to those who breached the blackout period, the opposition parties could not go on mainstream or social media to correct these lies, which were detrimental to our final vote count. Even the mainstream media could not point out that these are fake stories and fake pages. I now wish to address the exclusion of the judiciary and need for an effective remedy redress, Mr. Speaker, sir. When there are problems experienced with the election process, as we did in 2018, with our Court of Disputed Returns, it's unfortunate to say the least. As I had said in my contribution in the last session, February, the court ruling on the admissibility of evidence from certain witnesses basically collapsed the electoral petitions that was filed as the key witnesses were withdrawn. And there was no point in continuing with the exclusion of key witnesses, a ruling that could not be appealed and appealed effectively frustrated the judicial challenge and the rights of parties and citizens to redress. There is a need, Mr. Speaker, sir, for a holistic review. In our view, given the many flaws in the current system and already publicized by the political parties and individual members of the community, a holistic review of the whole electoral framework is required to look in detail at the issues identified. The proposed amendments to electoral legislations will not bring about electoral integrity, Mr. Speaker, sir. It is easy to label any process free and fair, but we notice the lack of transparency and different interpretations of rules in the last two elections. Mr. Speaker, sir, the Electoral Commission had recommended the following in 2014, that the Electoral Commission should be empowered with independent legal advice instead of solely relying on the Solicitor General. The provision of symbols on ballot papers and not only in candidate booklets, freeing up the media in respect of the election process, making observation of elections less restrictive, removing draconian provisions in the Political Parties Act. In conclusion, Mr. Speaker, sir, there is a need to improve the process to ensure a fair system and a level playing field. If government considers the view of the people, please withdraw the three bills to amend the electoral provisions. What is needed, Honorable Speaker, sir, is an independent commission to be appointed from both sides of the House to carry out a holistic approach and the review of the whole legislative framework for elections. Finally, Mr. Speaker, sir, we from this side of the House make these recommendations in the public interest so that the will of the people is truly heard and implemented. I thank you, sir, for the opportunity to speak on this motion. Nasa Valeu.